He ignored me for 2 years, but he was secretly planning to own me. Lorenzo Duca terrified mayors and ruled the city with an iron fist. To me, he was just my impossible, devastatingly handsome boss who demanded professional boundaries. He pushed me away to protect me from his violent enemies. But the second I promised my future to a safe guy, the Mafia Don lost his mind. Turns out, his cold distance was just him holding back the desperate urge to claim me for himself.
Let us open this case file together, you and I, because this one is absolutely wild. Picture this setup. We are looking at the office of Lorenzo Duca, smelling of expensive Italian leather and espresso that is way too bitter for a normal human. For 2 whole years, his secretary Lily has been playing the ultimate sidekick, dropping off his black coffee at exactly 3 o'clock, like clockwork. She is running his legit businesses while totally blindfolding herself to the briefcases stuffed with pure Mafia blood money and hitman orders. We see this insane survival mode all the time in these mob stories. She is literally ignoring a walking red flag just to keep breathing in his shadow. But here is the real-life lesson for us today. The toxic stuff you deliberately choose to ignore will always come back to bite you and completely ruin your life. She whispers that the Romano contract needs his signature, and her heart is literally doing backflips in her chest, just breathing the same air as this absolute unit of a mob boss. Duca does not even look up from his paperwork. The dark lighting makes his face look like a straight-up villain. He is rocking a tailored charcoal suit that acts like pure armor, giving off a boss energy that makes rival cartels shake in their boots. Even that gnarly scar across his left eyebrow is a massive warning sign that he wakes up and chooses violence. But to Lily, that scar is like some tragic romantic flaw. Listen to me, because this is a massive life lesson. We always try to romanticize the broken, edgy pieces in people, totally missing the fact that those exact pieces will eventually completely destroy our own peace of mind. He hit her with a smooth question, asking if there is anything else, his deep voice wrapping around her name like a total mind game. Stick with me on this timeline, you and I, because this is the exact second her mental defenses completely crumble. For 24 long months, she kept up a fake professional wall while working for an absolute apex predator. But on a random Tuesday, her whole system just crashes. She tells him yes and pushes the heavy oak door shut. Boom. She just locked herself in the boss cage. Duca finally looks up, and his ice-cold eyes lock onto her shaking body. Here is the tragic reality check we all need to understand. We are so desperate for attention that we constantly mistake the calculating stare of a hungry wolf for the comforting feeling of actually being truly loved and seen. The absolute madman notices the closed door without even flinching. He literally just asks if it is good news or bad news, totally unbothered. She steps forward, the loud clicking of her heels on the marble, basically broadcasting her massive panic. She whispers that it depends on his answer. Guys, Duca slowly raises one eyebrow, the exact same boss move he uses to terrify rival Mafia dons. In that split second, all of Lily's logic flies out the window. She hands over the biggest vulnerability you could ever give a mobster. She actually tells him she is in love with him. Total silence drops in the room. Here is a brutal life lesson for everyone. If you hand your fragile heart to a toxic person who lacks basic empathy, you are essentially begging for them to crush it into absolute dust. Duca literally turns to stone. If we zoom in on his face right now, he is doing this chilling, predatory scan of the situation. His vibe drops to absolute sub-zero temperatures. While the city traffic is moving outside, the air inside this office gets thick enough to cut with a knife. He drops her name, his tone just dripping with the coldest disrespect imaginable. But Lily talks right over him, which shows her total panic. She starts spilling about how she broke every rule and memorized all his habits. It is pure desperation from someone trying to find a soft heart inside a literal mafia demon. Listen to me on this one. The biggest life lesson here is learning to separate harsh reality from the fake, romantic fantasies we constantly push onto toxic people who are completely incapable of ever loving us back. 2 whole years of bottled up feelings just explode all over this sleek office. Lily starts crying out her absolute delusion, saying she knows he is a dangerous criminal, but she just does not care. She even tries to spin his brutal Mafia beatdowns as some kind of loyal protection, which is peak trauma bonding behavior. Guys, Duca slowly gets up from his massive leather chair. He moves like a straight-up tiger sizing up its next meal. He steps right into her bubble, hitting her with his signature scent of expensive cologne mixed with pure danger. He warns her softly that she has no idea what she is saying. You and I need to stop and look at this dynamic together. The major life lesson is that sometimes the most massive red flags we ignore are literally spoken out loud by the very person who is about to absolutely ruin us. His voice drops into this super low, dangerous tone that is just vibrating with bad intentions. Lily tilts her chin up, trying to act strong, while she is literally choking on her own fear. She is practically begging him to tell her he feels absolutely nothing for her. Bro, just watch how this absolute menace reacts to a genuine emotional breakdown. For a split second, there is a tiny flicker in his dark eyes, maybe a drop of human guilt. But nope, he instantly throws his emotional armor back up and steps into the shadows. He looks at her dead in the eyes and says she is just a good secretary. Ouch. Talk about a brutal reality check. Here is the essential life lesson we all need. You can never force a real, emotional bond with a cold-blooded hustler who sees you as nothing more than a totally replaceable piece of office furniture. He calls her efficient and loyal, telling her he would hate to lose her over some silly crush. His words are basically precision airstrikes designed to completely destroy her self-worth. She literally just handed this guy her soul on a silver platter, and he is reviewing her like a broken copy machine. When she finally starts breaking down, Duca goes full villain mode. He completely shreds her fairy tale romance dreams, showing her the freezing cold truth of who he really is. He flat out says he has zero time for emotional drama, reducing her massive heartbreak to a minor scheduling issue. Absolute savage behavior. The life lesson here is crystal clear. True strength is never about sticking around to endure a monster's toxic abuse. It is about finding the absolute courage to pack your bags and leave the game entirely. Duca flexes his toxic detachment, basically threatening her job if she does not chill out. Lily is frozen there, praying for a tiny crumb of sympathy from a guy with ice water in his veins. She finally chokes back a sob and agrees to finish the paperwork. As she turns around, he stops her. Her dopamine spikes, thinking he changed his mind. But nah, the boss just wants his business running. He coldly orders her to stay focused. You can basically hear her heart snap in half. Let us pause here, you and I, because this is exactly how villains operate. They will crush your entire spirit and then demand you keep grinding for them. The massive life lesson today is that your actual value has absolutely nothing to do with how a broken, toxic person decides to treat you. She stumbles back to her desk, looking like an absolute zombie, running purely on autopilot. The outer office is dead quiet because the main hitman is out doing the syndicate's dirty work. Lily collapses into her chair, while pure embarrassment completely fries her nervous system. She spent 2 years studying this mafia boss, like a final exam, and she completely failed to realize he would never actually care about her feelings. The emotional whiplash is crazy, basically hitting her like the physical of breaking a trauma bond. Right when she hits maximum rock bottom, her phone light up in the dark. Guys, pay attention, because this is a core truth about survival. Hitting absolute rock bottom is terrible, but it is often the only real life lesson that finally forces you to look up and completely switch up your game plan. The screen flashes with a message from Lucas Morrison, a totally normal guy who actually knows what healthy communication looks like. He casually asks her out for dinner to make her day better. For 2 years, Lily was so brainwashed by her toxic crush that she totally ignored good guys, hoping a mafia boss would magically change. But Duca's brutal rejection snapped that leash for good. Acting purely on survival mode, she types back a fast yes to Lucas. Right then, she decides to build the massive professional wall that Duca literally asked for. We see this massive plot twist all the time. The life lesson here is that sometimes the first step to fixing your life is not a big hero moment. Sometimes you just desperately need to build a heavy fortress to stop getting completely played. Duca locks himself in his dark villain lair for the rest of the day like a total edgelord. When Lily drops his shady mafia paperwork into the outbox at 6 o'clock, he acts like she is totally invisible. She walks down to the creepy underground garage all by herself and gives herself exactly 5 minutes to just break down. 5 minutes to cry over a toxic fantasy that only existed in her own head. Then she fixes her makeup in the rearview mirror and speeds off into the night. Her new defensive strategy is set. She is going to bury all this trauma under a flawless administrative mask. Stick with me on this one, you and I, because this is where it gets dangerous. The biggest life lesson to take away is that we constantly hide our massive wounds behind a fake smile instead of actually doing the hard work to heal our broken pieces. Guys, picture this. Lily is sitting alone, and the absolute silence is literally suffocating her. Her mob boss, Lorenzo, just flat out rejected her, and it hit her like a freight train. On paper, pivoting to a safe guy like Lucas is a total big brain move, but mentally, she is agonizing over it. She handed this ruthless boss her whole soul, and he filed it away like a pesky tax receipt. The wildest part, she is willingly choosing to go back tomorrow, ready to manage his crazy schedule and hand him his espresso like a loyal dog. Here is a brutal life lesson for you. The trauma bond is a literal trap. Sometimes, even when the cage door is wide open, we stay shivering in the dark because freedom just looks way too terrifying to face on our own. That toxic tether to the underworld is still going strong, bro. Her phone buzzes, lighting up the dark room with a super sweet text from Lucas. But to her completely fried nervous system, his golden retriever energy feels like dragging a massive boulder. She taps the screen, typing out some perfectly polite reply, just totally faking a normal life she cannot feel drama. For a whole week, she is basically a zombie drifting through the syndicate, clocking in at 8:30, running mafia operations flawlessly, and dipping at 6. She gives Lorenzo the exact freezing silence he asked for. Look, it is a hard truth, but we often shut off our own beating hearts just to survive the ice-cold orbit of a toxic person. We totally forget that merely surviving the cold is not the same as actually living in the light. Let you and I step into the syndicate shadows, where the vibe drops 10 degrees instantly. Lorenzo is at his desk, brushing off their emotional fallout like it is nothing. The guy wears a mask of pure ice, totally drained of empathy. Lily tries to play defense with dead silence. She stares at the floor, throwing away 2 years of insane chemistry to act like a broken robot. Lorenzo does not even flinch. But watch his top enforcer, Marco. He stands in the corner with major predator energy, and by Thursday, he sees right through her fake armor. Here is the lesson, guys. The massive wounds we desperately try to hide from the people who hurt us are usually flashing bright red to the quiet strangers watching from the back of the room. The monitor hits Lily with a harsh blue glow, making her look totally drained. She is death, gripping the keyboard, refusing to even make eye contact when Marco corners her. He leans against the cabinet, keeping his voice super low while absolutely shredding her fake boundaries. He calls out her tragic posture, pointing out how the fiery girl who used to talk back to the Don is now just an obedient ghost. Lily forces this incredibly painful plastic smile. She feeds him some rehearsed garbage about drawing professional boundaries, but her hands are literally vibrating over the keys. It is a wild human reality, bro. We love to wrap our terrifying trauma in the clean clothes of a rational choice, secretly praying nobody notices our spirit is completely collapsing right underneath. Marco is reading his boss like an open book. Lorenzo might have the genius brain of a criminal mastermind, but he is walking blind through the glass house of real human feelings. His neglect is basically poisoning Lily from the inside out. It hits her like a ton of bricks that everyone in the Mafia sees her bleeding heart except the actual guy crushing it. So panicking, she runs straight to Lucas. Friday hits, and she slaps on a perfect fake smile, wearing soft colors to cosplay a happy life she does not actually have. When Lucas hands her these bright yellow flowers, it feels totally alien compared to the brutal Mafia reality. Look, sometimes we run so fast toward a safe harbor, only to realize our eyes are already completely used to the pitch black. Lily is staring in the mirror, literally doing construction work on her shattered vibe. She throws on huge heels to force her posture up, fixing her hair to completely kill any resemblance to the weak girl fetching Lorenzo his coffee. Taking those yellow flowers from Lucas, she forces herself to breathe in that normal scent. Guys, Lucas is the absolute opposite of Lorenzo. He is a super honest dude making clean money, miles away from all the Mafia blood and smoke. He actually looks at her like a real person, not some asset he can just control. And here is the brutal truth about having a damaged soul. When you spend years surviving inside a literal blender of manipulation, a gentle breeze of normal kindness feels like an alien language you completely forgot how to speak. The smooth jazz instantly turns into pure static the second Lucas drops the wrong question. He casually brings up Lorenzo, and Lily completely freezes up like a deer in headlights. Acting like a terrified prisoner protecting her own warden, she totally lies, painting this ruthless Mafia Don as just a strict but fair boss. Lucas leans in, squinting because he can literally sense the massive ghost sitting at their table. He asks why she pushed him away for so long, trying to sniff out a rival. Lily feeds him some weak lie about just being confused. Listen, the ugly truth is that our pride makes us lie to protect our own toxic chains. It is way easier to tell people your heart is just confused than to admit you willingly threw it straight into a blazing fire. Lucas grabs her hand across the table and straight up promises her a solid future. For any normal person, this is the ultimate jackpot. But behind Lily's fake smile, massive red alarms are absolutely screaming in her head. Her breathing drops, and she feels like a trapped animal backed against a wall. Lorenzo's insane mind games have completely ruined her wiring, leaving her totally addicted to the toxic crumbs of his attention. Her brain is screaming to jump on this safe lifeboat. But her broken spirit actually misses the drowning feeling of the mob boss. She smiles and says yes, slapping on a mask to hide the horror. We constantly mistake peace for total boredom, especially when our exhausted souls are trained to think absolute chaos is actually true love. She just keeps pushing through the motions, completely praying that faking it will eventually make it real. Standing under the porch light, Lucas leans in for a super gentle kiss. His eyes are literally asking for permission, waiting for a yes. And because it is so respectful and sweet, she feels absolutely nothing, zero sparks. Her brain is completely starved for the toxic fire Lorenzo trained her to need. Weeks just blur into this boring loop of nice dinners and safe dates. When Lucas asks to make it totally official, after 3 weeks, she just caves. She grabs his hand entirely as a survival move, not out of love. You and I need to get this straight. There is a deeply tragic reality in chaining yourself to a safe dock just because you are completely terrified of the dark water. Lily is basically using this normal dude as a human shield against the mental destruction of her Mafia boss. Lucas is just a blank canvas. But back at the syndicate, the wolves are always watching. Marco spots her changed vibe in a second. He traps her by the printer, demanding to know if Lorenzo knows about her new boyfriend. Not a chance, bro. Lily snaps back instantly, using massive rage to hide how hard she is panicking. She aggressively defends her secret, screaming that her personal life is none of the boss's business. But her explosive reaction totally exposes her. True healing is actually just quiet indifference. When you react to a basic question with pure shaking rage, it just proves your darkest chains are not actually broken, they are simply hiding out of sight. Lily is completely living in denial, aggressively shutting down Marco and acting like she is totally free from the boss's toxic grip. Marco just stares at her, looking exhausted by her lies. He knows exactly how terrifying Lorenzo is, and he quietly tells her she actually deserves real love, not to be a ghost haunting their Mafia empire. Boom. 6 weeks into this fake escape, Lucas decides to go all in. Sitting under these fancy lights, he slides a velvet box across the table and reveals a massive diamond. For Lily, all the oxygen is instantly sucked out of the room. This is not a win, guys. It is a massive crash between her fake perfect life and the absolute trauma she is burying. Sometimes the life preserver we grab becomes the exact heavy stone that sinks us down to the bottom. That shiny diamond is basically throwing daggers of light right into her eyes. Lucas starts dropping these incredibly romantic lines, hyping up her smarts and offering to build a completely safe life together. It is literally everything a healed person wants. But stick with me here and look at her face. Her eyes are totally dead. She completely dissociates, just floating above her own frozen body, while this massive life event happens without her. Deep down in her completely wrecked mind, she is not walking toward the sunshine. She is secretly praying for Lorenzo to kick the restaurant door off the hinges and drag her back into the toxic chaos. The ultimate tragedy of being broken is exactly this. A deeply damaged soul will stare directly at a rescue boat and willingly choose to drown. Listen up, guys. We need to pause and look at this absolute train wreck together. Lily drops the big yes to Lucas, but mentally, she is completely ghosting her own engagement. The crowd is cheering, but she is dead inside, and that shiny new diamond ring sits on her finger like a 50-pound weight. It does absolutely nothing to hide the invisible scars Lorenzo left on her. She fakes a smile for her new guy. But come Monday, she marches right into the Mafia boss's office, using that ring as a flex. She tells herself it is proof she moved on. But let's be real. Here is the harsh truth we all need to learn. When you use your brand new happiness just to trigger your toxic ex, you are basically screaming that they still live rent-free in your head. Meanwhile, the syndicate is running with absolute, ice-cold precision. Lorenzo is sitting there like a total mob boss, running his underground empire, while Lily desperately tries to act like she is not hauling a giant rock on her left hand. The vibe in the room instantly shifts the second he gets up for his espresso, sleeves rolled up, giving off major apex predator energy. Lily slides the cup onto his mahogany desk like a flawless robot. But then, boom, his bare knuckles brush against hers. A massive jolt of electricity shoots straight up her arm, and in one fraction of a second, weeks of moving on literally go up in smoke. Seriously, you can build the highest walls, but when the person who broke you finally reaches out, your body instantly remembers who really owns you. The oxygen just straight up vanishes from the room. Lorenzo locks his dark eyes on that shiny new diamond, staring at the little fence. Some other dude tried to build around his personal property. For one wild second, his untouchable Mafia king mask totally shatters. Pure, unhinged territorial rage flashes in his eyes before he dials it back to a terrifying deadpan voice. Lily tries to act tough, throwing her fiancé's name out there like a fragile little shield. Big mistake. Lorenzo spits Lucas's name back like it is literal garbage, already doing the math on how long she was gone. It is a super chilling lesson, guys. When the devil figures out his favorite prisoner finally found a way out, he does not just lock the door, he burns the entire escape route to the ground. All right? Stick with me here because this exact moment is pure cinema. The heavy office tension spikes the second Lily drops the classic line, "When you know, you know." Lorenzo gets this tiny twitch in his jaw, and you just know his polished facade is completely wrecked. He gives her this fake congratulations, but his eyes are giving straight-up villain denied his prize. She actually turns toward the door, thinking she scored a massive win. But then his voice cracks like a whip. He grips his mahogany desk so hard his knuckles go white, and drops the ultimate boss command. Take it off. It is a brutal reality check about toxic control. If someone treats your soul like their personal property, they are never going to just open the cage and let you fly. The temperature in the room instantly hits sub-zero as he doubles down. He wants that rock gone. Watch how smoothly he ditches the desk, completely ignoring personal boundaries to invade her space. Lily frantically backs up, her nervous system screaming that she is in massive danger. She tries to call out his toxic behavior, but a dude running on pure Mafia arrogance just sees a speed bump. He steps right into her shadow, dropping a terrifyingly calm reality check that her future belongs to him, not some random fiancé. Then his hand snaps up, gripping her jaw and forcing her to look right into his eyes. It is a super harsh pill we all have to swallow eventually. When a predator suddenly gets that close, it is never about love. It is about locking down total control. He drops the demand a second time, dragging out her full name like a judge handing down a life sentence. Behind those wide eyes, Lily is completely glitching out. I mean, just 6 weeks ago, this guy totally wrecked her self-esteem, looking right through her like she was dust on his custom suit. Now he is standing here, acting like he owns her destiny. Trying to find a footing, she claps back, throwing his own brutal rejection right in his face. But his quiet, arrogant reply just hits different. "I know what I said. The sheer audacity is enough to stop your heart. Her frozen shock finally turns into shaking, pure rage. Honestly, it is a powerful thing to see. Righteous anger is usually the absolute last defense our brains can pull up when a manipulator tries to gaslight us. You and I have to look closely at this pivot because Lily finally spots the massive red flags in his eyes. This is not some fairy tale romance. This is a straight-up hostile takeover. Lorenzo stands there like a statue, swearing his feelings never flipped. Then, check out this calculated move. He steps back just long enough to slide the heavy brass deadbolt shut. Click. The trap is locked. Then he starts spinning this masterclass in gaslighting, claiming he only broke her heart to protect her from his dangerous underground life. He actually blames her new engagement on his own failure to protect her. It leaves us with a totally wild realization. A deeply toxic person will always figure out how to dress up their unhinged jealousy like they are some kind of noble knight. Even with her hands shaking uncontrollably, Lily tries to hold the line. She tells him straight up she picked a peaceful, normal life on purpose. That is when Lorenzo busts out his ultimate cheat code. He plays the victim. He admits he spent 2 agonizing years tracking her every single move, spinning his literal stalking into this tragic, romantic sacrifice. Lily tries to hit him with basic logic, calling out all the massive holes in his creepy story. But as he steps deeper into the dim lighting, her brain just blue screens. The freeze response totally takes the wheel. He leans in close, wrapping her up in an invisible web of fear. It is a super dark truth about human nature. The worst toxic bonds start the second someone convinces you they are your only safe spot. He is putting on an absolute acting clinic, playing the broken martyr who suffered in silence just to keep her out of harm's way. But Lily is not having it. With tears literally spilling down her face, she reminds him of the absolute trash way he humiliated her. She asks if she is just supposed to wipe her memory and bow down. Her pushback is like a tiny spark in a pitch-black room. But Lorenzo does not even raise his voice. Instead, his massive hands grab her face with this terrifying, soft gentleness. And then he drops the real, ugly truth. He just could not handle the idea of another guy claiming her. It is a harsh reality check for all of us. A guy totally obsessed with Mafia power does not actually cry over losing a soulmate. He just throws a fit over losing his favorite toy. Now, you and I are watching the exact moment the emotional venom finally hits her heart. He whispers that losing her is physically ripping him apart, and that perfectly timed little crack in his armor just nukes her last wall. Dropping her voice like a totally defeated kid, she admits how absolute garbage he made her feel. He does not even try to deny it. He just presses his forehead against hers, catching a tear with his thumb, and swears he will spend forever fixing it. But the mob boss always comes to collect. In the exact same breath, he tells her to ditch the ring and set her new life on fire. The takeaway here is wild. The people who completely break you will always try to sell themselves as the only cure for the exact damage they did to you in the first place. She takes one last desperate swing at keeping things professional, reminding him she is literally just on the payroll. Lorenzo instantly shatters that boundary, yanking her right up against his chest. Watch how insane his manipulation gets here. He totally flips the script. He drops the cold Mafia Don act and plays the desperate lover, claiming he would let his entire underground empire burn just to keep her. The gravity of that flex is dangerously addictive. In the dead quiet of the room, you can literally hear her breath hitch as the trap fully snaps shut. He completely swallows her in his shadow, It is a super scary lesson to learn. When a toxic guy rebrands his obsession as epic romance, the victim will almost always mistake their shiny new prison for a bulletproof safe house. The final, mind-blowing ultimatum is just hanging heavy in the room. The cost of rolling with him is torching her entire, safe, vanilla life. If you checked her heart rate right now, she is basically flatlining in pure panic. Somewhere inside, she knows Lucas is the good guy. Quiet mornings, zero Mafia drama, straight up sunlight. But trapped in the dark corner of this office, Lorenzo's pull is way too massive to fight. She makes the classic mistake of confusing a massive spike of survival adrenaline with some kind of once-in-a-lifetime soulmate connection. Chasing that toxic high, she practically throws in the towel. It shows a crazy flaw in all of us. We will absolutely toss away a perfectly peaceful life if the incoming train wreck looks cinematic and hyped up enough. Let's break down this absolute madness, guys. Lily is sobbing, trying to strike a fair deal with a walking red flag who already owns her soul. She begs for an equal seat in his brutal syndicate, hoping for the illusion of free will. Lorenzo does not even blink. He tosses her empty promises like spare change, locking down her loyalty with crazy vows of devotion. His dark eyes lock onto hers, playing the ultimate protector. She is shaking, pleading with him to prove this isn't a twisted power trip. But his cold expression shows the brutal truth. Here is a simple life lesson for you. You cannot force a toxic, power-hungry villain to be honest. They will only ever mirror the exact lie you desperately need to hear so they can secure your total and absolute surrender. Look at this insane dynamic. She stares into his eyes, begging for the power to destroy him, just as easily as he could destroy her. We are witnessing the absolute peak of a trauma bond. Two broken people finding balance through mutual destruction. Notice how Lorenzo shifts gears. His hard features soften as he fakes a moment of deep realization. He actually whispers that she has held a blade to his throat since day one. He masterfully twists his own obsessive stalking into a display of helpless vulnerability. Then he drops the final trap, daring her to be brave enough to choose him. The life lesson here is terrifying. If a smooth manipulator can convince you that giving up your freedom is an act of bravery, you will gladly walk right into their cage and turn the lock yourself. Today, you and I are going to unpack this massive plot twist together. The camera lingers as Lily stares at the blood on his hands, fully aware of the Mafia darkness waiting to consume her. But logic has left the chat, silenced by the wild pulse of her obsession. With shaking fingers, she slides that modest diamond ring right off her hand. That tiny sound of metal hitting the heavy desk drops like a Judgment Day gavel. It is her ultimate surrender to the undisputed king of the Underworld. He reaches out, pulling her into the shadows to claim his victory. This leaves us with a serious life lesson, guys. Trading your quiet life for the thrill of toxic chaos never brings actual peace. It only forces you to learn a far more dangerous set of rules just to survive the night. The tension here is insane. The shot tightens as Lorenzo literally pins Lily against the solid oak door. His fingers twist into her hair, cutting off any chance of escape. Let us be real. This is not romance. This is a predator marking his Mafia territory. The lighting catches that adrenaline-fueled darkness in his eyes. He quietly commands her to admit she belongs to him now. She breathes out the words, totally confusing the erasure of her identity with a romantic victory. She begs him to lower his walls, and he effortlessly lies, whispering that he already has. Here is the life lesson to remember. We sometimes mistake the cages designed to totally break us for the protective shelter we have always craved. Do not let a toxic warden trick you into falling in love with your own chains. 3 sharp knocks suddenly shatter the heavy silence. Marco's muffled voice bleeds through the door with an urgent syndicate call. The violent reality of Lorenzo's crime family crashes right back into the plot. But the Mafia boss does not flinch. His intense gaze stays locked onto Lily. He manages his criminal empire through a cracked door, keeping his newly claimed prize frozen in place. He coldly orders her to cut all ties to her normal life and dump her fiancé Lucas immediately. We watch the last spark of her conscience die as she lets out a shaky breath. The life lesson here is wild but true. Once a seriously toxic bond takes root in your heart, you will willingly burn down your own peaceful safe havens just to keep that destructive fire burning bright. The guilt trip here is real. A dark shadow crosses Lily's face as the heavy weight of her betrayal kicks in. She desperately wants to look Lucas in the eye and end things with some dignity. But look at Lorenzo. The muscle in his jaw leaps, showing a spasm of threatened mob boss dominance. He refuses to let her go do this alone. He is not playing the sweet protector. He is dragging his newly conquered territory out to flex on a defeated rival. Lily hears that dark, possessive grit in his voice. To anyone with a healthy brain, that territorial growl is a massive red flag screaming at you to sprint away. But her broken spirit just eats it up. The life lesson is brutal. When we are desperate to feel valued, we will easily confuse a monster's possessive jealousy with genuine and unconditional love. Let's pause and study this frame together, because it is absolute cinema. Lily's voice shakes as she whispers how cruel this feels. The camera focuses entirely on Lorenzo's icy eyes. Basic empathy does not exist in his Mafia rulebook. He tells her flatly that he does not care, his tone dropping to a lethal register at the thought of her with another guy. In his twisted mind, Lily is not a human making a choice. She is stolen property he is reclaiming. He leans in, making a dark vow that no one else will touch what belongs to him. Anyone with survival instincts would sprint for the exit. Yet, Lily stays frozen, letting his shadow completely drown her. The life lesson? Sometimes the gravity of a toxic person's darkness is so heavy, it overrides your basic human instinct to just get out and survive. The silence in this office stretches out, thick and hard to breathe. After feeling invisible for weeks, the intense weight of Lorenzo's focus hits Lily like a narcotic. It terrifies her, yet she leans right back into the fire. Desperate for a fraction of power, she begs him to promise absolute honesty. He swears to it without a second of hesitation, murmuring that no other woman has existed in his mind since the day he first saw her. That terrifying confession washes over her, filling her with a fake manufactured warmth. He has perfectly positioned himself as both the lethal poison and the only cure. Here is a sobering life lesson, guys. When you are truly starving for affection and validation, even a single drop of deadly poison will taste exactly like the sweetest glass of fresh water. The drama here is absolutely peaking. Lily's voice cracks as she reminds him of the wreckage she caused, calling him her damnation. Lorenzo just pulls her flush against his chest. His grip tightens until her breath hitches, leaving a physical mark of his mob boss authority. Suddenly, a phone buzzes against the desk. Notice how the room's energy instantly drops. He smooths his tie, snapping right back into the cold, calculating boss of a crime family. Then he lays the final trap. He casually drops the bomb that she will not be returning to her apartment again. Flashing a dark smile, he labels this forced isolation as protection. It is a painful life lesson, guys. The massive walls, built to keep the dangerous outside threats away are almost always the exact same walls used to lock the helpless prisoner inside. This guy is playing chess while she plays checkers. He dictates every term of her new reality, moving so fast she cannot find a second to locate her logic. He commands her to leave Lucas's ring behind and change her clothes, erasing the independent life she built. To anyone watching, this destruction of her identity is a massive red flag. But the camera pushes in on Lily's face, and bro, we see her actually smile. She nods, blindly accepting his strict rules on how to speak to him. As she walks out, her mind is short-circuited by the sudden plunge into submission. It is a quiet tragedy we witness far too often. We will gladly hand over our own freedom as long as we believe the villain taking it is the only one who truly understands our deep pain. Stick with me, guys, because this visual detail is vital. That diamond ring sits abandoned beside her keyboard. It rests there as a sad monument to the safe life she is throwing into the Mafia fire. Yet, as Lily stares at it, she only feels a hollow sense of relief. She tells herself the lie that this brutal betrayal is actually an act of mercy for Lucas. Her screen lights up with a message from Lorenzo. They are buying a new ring today. It is literally a heavy collar disguised as jewelry. She types a weak response, asking why they need to move so fast. But her hesitation is fake, just a ghost of her old independent self. The hardest life truth about falling into the dark is this. By the time you finally pause to ask if things are moving too fast, you have already crossed the fatal point of no return. His reply flashes on the screen, brutally cold and stripped of any romantic warmth. He types flatly that he will put his ring on her finger today, before she has a chance to change her mind. It is a terrifying admission of the mob trap he has set. Lily reads the words, fully aware that this man is a deadly cliff edge. Yet, buzzing from the intense heat of his control, she closes her eyes and steps off the ledge anyway. She desperately tricks herself into believing this chaotic freefall is just passion. Outside her door, the heavy sounds of syndicate violence echo down the hall. Life is full of these quiet moments right before the massive crash. They remind us of a harsh life lesson. Our most destructive choices are rarely blind mistakes. They are tragic decisions we deliberately walk into with our eyes wide open. Let's kick this off. Picture Lily sitting alone in her dead quiet office, her hands shaking like crazy as she figures out how to completely destroy her innocent fiancé's life. Suddenly, the heavy door swings open and the vibe violently snaps. Enter Lorenzo. The undisputed Mafia Don steps in, practically radiating pure intimidation. But plot twist, the second he spots her, that brutal mobster mask completely melts off. He reaches out, and she instantly traces the thick, brutal scars on his hands, the exact hands that literally built a criminal empire in blood. Listen, here's the absolute truth. A stone-cold monster who knows exactly how to shed a single, vulnerable tear on command is infinitely more dangerous than a villain who just screams and shows his teeth. The second their skin touches, a crazy spike of adrenaline absolutely floods her system, locking in her tragic fate. Then Marco saunters into the room with a knowing smirk, totally acting like this messed up relationship is just a normal Tuesday. Without skipping a beat, these guys pivot from romance to casually chatting about an enemy syndicate they just buried. Meanwhile, Lorenzo is lazily stroking her hand like she's his favorite new toy. But Marco brings an icy reality check. By standing next to the biggest boss in town, Lily just painted a massive bullseye right on her own back. It proves a harsh reality about chasing power. The gold crown might look amazing in the spotlight, but it always makes your head the absolute easiest target in the pitch dark. Her totally normal life gets instantly vaporized. Lorenzo completely surrounds her with a shadow team of heavily armed enforcers. Her freedom is entirely gone, totally swallowed by his insane paranoia. Yet somehow, she looks up at his sharp jawline and mistakes this terrifying stalking for true romance. She begs him to at least let her warn Lucas before dropping the bomb. But Lorenzo's eyes just go flat dead. Not a chance. He openly admits he wants a front row seat to watch the poor guy mentally snap, twisting his sick cruelty into a grand declaration of his devotion. This is exactly why you always need to watch your back. Real, genuine love is supposed to build your world up and make you shine. But toxic obsession only ever wants to own the ashes of your absolute ruin. You and I have definitely seen this specific brand of disaster unfold before, right? It always kicks off in some dark trap. He backs her right into the freezing concrete wall of a parking garage, his voice dripping with absolute entitlement. In his twisted brain, she never actually chose her fiancé. To him, Lucas just stole property that rightfully belonged to the Don. He flexes his toxic dominance, bragging about breaking his rival just for the fun of it. When he grabs her, there's zero warmth. It's just a ruthless boss stamping his name onto his latest prize. Look at her shaking hands. It's a bitter pill to swallow, but control constantly disguises itself as grand, sweeping passion right up until the heavy steel cage completely locks around you. The tension totally skyrockets as they slide into his expensive car. He cracks her door open with this hyper-rehearsed smoothness, completely masking the freezing ice underneath his charm. Even with the streetlights flashing over them, his heavy hand stays glued to her leg, silently screaming that she has literally nowhere to run. She gets a tiny flash of guilt, fully realizing she's about to destroy a completely innocent guy, but Lorenzo is a straight-up mastermind at playing brain games. In 2 seconds flat, he flips the script, convincing her that crushing a good man is just the unavoidable tax on their dark destiny. We constantly accept the comfortable lies of toxic people because facing the brutal truth about the damage we cause hurts way too much. Listen to the absolute madness she starts spitting as they cruise through the city. He straight up orders her to say she belongs to him out loud, desperate for the sick thrill of her verbal surrender. And she just folds, confusing her total mental breakdown for some kind of romantic awakening. She sounds entirely hollow while blindly calling this dangerous criminal her gravity. Like he's some natural force she can't possibly escape. She promises to walk straight into a burning fire as long as he's the one holding the match. It's just hard to watch her throw her self-worth right out the window. Here's the saddest part about this drama. When you chain your survival to the approval of someone who constantly ruins you, you don't find real love, you just erase yourself entirely. He kisses her shaking fingers, and for one chilling second, the fake boyfriend mask drops completely. He lays out the horrifying truth right there. He confesses that staring at her in the office was never a crush. It was a calculated predator stalking his prey. He brags about tearing her mental defenses apart. The guy looks her dead in the eye and admits he's a monster who doesn't deserve her, but he's greedy enough to drag her to hell anyway. He guarantees her a miserable future of non-stop violence, fully knowing her brain is too scrambled to run. Please burn this into your memory. Sometimes the most toxic people don't bother lying to us at all. They tell us exactly how dangerous they are, and we just completely refuse to listen. We really need to talk about this next move because this is where her sanity totally flatlines. She's sitting there frozen, actually telling him to stop fighting his feelings, like she's the one running the show. But watch the genius villain tactics here. They pull up to Lucas's quiet house. Lorenzo turns off the car and hands her a fake golden ticket, mostly saying she can go handle this alone. A mafia kingpin never leaves things to chance. He already hacked her brain so badly that she's terrified of her own shadow. Right on cue, she literally begs her captor to hold her hand. Real, hardcore manipulation doesn't sound like an angry boss shouting orders. It looks exactly like someone politely handing you the key to lock yourself in a cage. The darkest, victorious smirk slowly crawls across Lorenzo's face. That isn't a man falling in love. That's a warlord planting his flag on a conquered city. He walks her to the front door, keeping his heavy hand glued to her spine. It looks like protection, but it's straight up ownership. The door swings open, and poor Lucas is standing there, his face lighting up with pure innocent energy. But watch his soul actually leave his body the exact second he spots the terrifying syndicate boss looming right behind his girl. Lily can barely choke out her words as she asks to come inside. Human intuition is honestly wild. Before anyone even speaks a single word, your nervous system always warns you when a literal monster is standing right on your front porch. Look at the insane contrast in this living room. Lucas built a super cozy, brightly lit sanctuary, but Lily's corrupted brain now sees this beautiful piece as disgusting. Lucas is staring at them, choking on the shock as he recognizes the ruthless Underworld boss from her office. Meanwhile, Lorenzo stands there like a shadow, totally poisoning the happy vibe of the house. He doesn't even blink as he coldly announces that Lily has some news to drop. She shoots him a desperate look, begging him to make it easier. But nope, he just coldly watches her struggle. He forces her to swing the axe herself. You've got to watch out for the toxic manipulator who actively demands you completely trash your own peaceful life just to prove your blind loyalty to them. Lucas stumbles backward, his face twisting in raw agony. He frantically asks what he did wrong, desperately trying to stop his universe from imploding. Lily whispers that he was perfect, which just twists the knife 10 times deeper into his gut. She checks in with Lorenzo, waiting for his sick nod of approval before she completely annihilates Lucas. She drops the bomb that their happy future was a total lie. Lucas finally snaps. He stares at the dead-eyed mafia boss ruining his life and explodes into rage, screaming at Lorenzo's arrogant smirk. Lorenzo doesn't even flinch. He just calmly states that he owns her now. It's a deeply brutal life lesson. You absolutely cannot negotiate with a villain who views human beings as nothing more than acquired property. Let's watch this masterclass in emotional destruction. Lorenzo steps up, casually wiping out Lucas's future like it was an annoying bug. Lucas tries to fight back, crying about the months they spent building a life, but he's a regular dude going up against a final boss. Lorenzo's huge frame blocks out the light in the room. He drops the ultimate nuke, telling Lucas that every smile Lily ever gave him was just a fake survival tactic. He doesn't just steal the girl, he totally poisons every good memory Lucas ever had. And the most insane plot twist? Lily actually nods along with him. Here's the tragic reality you have to remember. When a toxic lie gets hammered into a broken mind long enough, it becomes the absolute truth. That dark trauma bond is officially sealed. Look at this absolute heartbreak, guys. Lily is standing there telling poor Lucas her heart belongs to someone else, but it is purely the tragic script of a hijacked mind. Lucas is staring down at the silver ring shaking in her hand, realizing his peaceful future is gone forever. His voice completely breaks as he tells her to just keep it, trash it, or burn it. The guy is in so much agony he can barely point to the door. For a split second, Lily actually feels the guilt and tries to snap out of the nightmare. But nope, Lorenzo is already right there. The boss slides his heavy hand down her spine, shoving her out before she can even apologize. Here is the life lesson for today. You can never use innocent people to hide from your demons, because those demons always find you, leaving only the innocent bleeding in the dark. Let us unpack this piece by piece, shall we? The door clicks shut, the adrenaline wears off, and Lily collapses against the peeling wallpaper. She is begging Lorenzo to tell her she is not a monster. And this guy, he pulls her in, playing the ultimate savior in a tragic movie he personally directed. He coldly brushes off Lucas, saying the guy will bounce back, showing absolutely zero remorse. Then Lorenzo spins the ultimate gaslighting web, acting like he is the real victim who had to endure watching another man touch his property. This brings us to a bitter life lesson about toxic control. The darkest hearts will deliberately burn your house straight to the ground, only to turn around and demand that you thank them for the warmth of the ashes. Lily looks up at the shadow of a man who just ruined her life. Her voice is shaking like crazy as she asks, "What happens now?" Lorenzo just hits her with this slow, terrifying Mafia boss smile. It is a massive red flag, but her broken mind totally ignores it. He leans in, voice smooth as glass, and lays out the rest of her life. He is going to buy a heavy diamond to officially mark his territory, then take her home to seal the deal in the dark. The knot in her stomach is pure, raw terror, but her hijacked brain somehow translates it into twisted desire. She weakly calls him arrogant, but he just laughs and calls it the brutal truth. It brings us to a devastating life lesson. Once you finally give up and stop fighting to be heard, the suffocating silence around you starts to feel exactly like peace. Stick with me, because this is where the twisted psychology gets truly insane. We are watching the exact moment the very last protective wall of her soul shatters, wrapped up in his crushing grip. She feels his threatening presence and somehow mistakes it for ultimate safety. Her surrender is absolute, guys. He kisses her, but let us be real. It is purely a violent, possessive seal of ownership. He leads her down a hidden street, straight to a private jeweler. They step through massive steel doors into a velvet room, completely cut off from the outside world. This is exactly how the mob boss trap closes, trapping her in profound isolation, wrapped in staggering wealth. But the timeless life lesson here remains fiercely unchanged. A gilded cage is still a prison, no matter how many heavy diamonds they scatter across the floor. The tension in this private viewing room is absolutely wild. The jeweler, Giovanni, is bowing his head with that trembling fear you only show to an apex predator. Watch Lorenzo's hands right here. He is not holding Lily. He is straight up caging her. His grip is a calculated vise pinning her to his suit. When he demands to see rings, it is not a sweet romantic token, but an iron brand of ownership. He whispers that cost means nothing. Lily sinks into the velvet sofa, wide-eyed, realizing a single stone here could fund her entire existence. She tries to whisper a fragile protest, but Lorenzo smoothly brushes it off like nothing. This brings us to a seriously vital life lesson. When a controlling figure freely buys your reality, they are silently purchasing your absolute, unquestioning compliance. Look at how calculated this guy is. Lorenzo's thumb slowly traces her bare ring finger, creating a hypnotic friction to completely anchor her terrified focus on him. Notice there is absolutely no classic proposal here. He doesn't ask for her future. He dictates her surrender, demanding a diamond heavy enough to announce her status to the entire Underworld syndicate. A flicker of reality hits Lily. She whispers that they never even discussed marriage, and she is right. He just declared it like some unavoidable doom. To a master manipulator, consenting is never a question. It is just a given. He actually chuckles at the idea of a normal courtship. The essential life lesson here is simple but crucial, guys. True partnership relies on a freely shared voice, never a unilateral mandate wearing the mask of dark romance. To tighten the psychological trap, Lorenzo drops his voice to a velvety whisper and perfectly recites her private morning routines. By wrapping his total stalker obsession in the gentle rhythm of love, he expertly strips away her final layers of resistance. It is a horrifying display of affection used as a heavy chain. Suddenly, Giovanni returns and shatters the spell. The jeweler points to a rare sapphire, but Lorenzo's cold gaze locks onto a massive, brutal emerald instead. Lily shakes her head. Her voice trembles. She tells him a stone that big makes a normal life impossible. Lorenzo just smiles, his teeth gleaming like a predator in the dim light. The lesson we must take from this scene is super vital. Grand gestures are very often engineered to permanently blind your rational intuition. The tension spikes as Lorenzo totally dismisses her logic, coldly ordering her to stop thinking like a lowly employee. He slides that heavy emerald onto her shaking finger, and Lily just exhales, literally feeling the weight of this jewelry anchoring her to him. She stares at it, totally mesmerized by the brilliant green shining against her skin. Guys, we are watching her fall in love with her own cage in real time. Lorenzo whispers that green represents loyalty, but when she looks up, his real darkness bleeds out. He casually admits the color reminds him of a dress she once wore with another man, a memory that still triggers his insane territorial rage. The critical life lesson here is chilling. True danger arrives the exact moment you confuse a partner's suffocating jealousy for a genuine romantic compliment. Lorenzo seals the purchase with a single sharp nod, completely bypassing her consent. Then he pivots to a crazy psychological maneuver. He tightens his grip and demands to see the men's bands. He declares that if she has to wear his mark, he will wear hers. A tragic blush rushes into Lily's cheeks, and she looks at him with wide eyes, mistaking this calculated move for genuine emotional surrender. But in this violent mafia underworld, rings are just a public branding iron. By offering his hand, Lorenzo crafts a flawless illusion of shared power. He steps inside the cage just long enough to lock the door behind him. Please remember this simple life lesson. A seasoned manipulator will gladly wear a symbolic collar, as long as it convinces the victim to gratefully lock the leash around their own neck. The jeweler's hands are shaking as he brings out a tray of bands. Lorenzo picks a heavy platinum ring that matches the cold vibe of her massive emerald. He slides it onto his own finger with grim finality, cementing his psychological claim over her. For Lily, watching that metal catch the light, everything shifts. The frantic nightmare is now a solid reality. Giovanni nervously says it will take 2 weeks for sizing, and Lorenzo's jaw instantly tightens. With the chilling impatience of a predator locking down his prey, the boss ruthlessly cuts the schedule. He declares they will marry in exactly 1 month. You and I must understand the terrible mechanics of this urgency. The life lesson here is crystal clear. A manipulator will always accelerate the timeline, ensuring the victim has zero space to process the trap or find an escape. That 1-month deadline hits Lily like a punch to the gut. Her pupils dilate, and her pulse is frantically fluttering at her throat. 30 days feels like a death sentence to her freedom. Lorenzo senses her panic instantly. His voice drops into a dark purr, threatening to drag her to Las Vegas right now if she complains. His dangerous smile completely masks his insane level of control. When she offers a fragile, nervous laugh to diffuse the tension, his massive hands cup her face, forcefully anchoring her to his gravity. He whispers that she is already his. Then Lorenzo leans down, kissing her with a bruising intensity that completely short-circuits her panic. Her logic totally melts into sensory overload. The lesson here is so tragic, guys. Cold reason simply cannot survive when deep fear and intense desire violently collide. A shadow of predatory promise darkens Lorenzo's eyes as he offers her the ultimate fake choice. He asks if they go to her apartment or his sprawling Mafia estate. Exhausted and completely trauma-bonded, Lily chooses his place, eager to step into his golden enclosure. As his armored car glides through the dark streets, he leans in close and explicitly warns her that once she enters his domain, she is never leaving. Bro, that is literally the language of a hostage taker, yet her shattered mind digests it as romantic poetry, and she just nods against his shoulder. His penthouse sits atop the city's most impregnable tower, a masterclass in physical isolation. We must always remember this crucial life lesson. The absolute most dangerous, inescapable prisons are never built with cold iron bars, but with gentle promises of eternal, unbreakable safety. Guys, picture this. Lily steps out of the elevator expecting a supervillain lair, but this penthouse is straight up architectural digest material. Warm woods, custom art. Lorenzo literally designed this place to hack her last remaining brain cells. She walks to the massive glass window, looking at the city lights, and boom, he is right behind her, chest to back. Classic alpha male claiming posture. He points at the skyline like, babe, everything the light touches is ours. It is peak grooming, honestly. She is trapped in the delusion, telling him she does not care about the cash, she just wants him. He tangles his giant hands in her hair, so toxic, but so gripping. The lesson here is brutal. Turning down a monster's money does not mean you will not end up as his shiny toy. We kick off in the suffocating shadows of the penthouse, where Lorenzo is literally weaponizing his own mental baggage. He whispers about his dark, violent urges, twisting it so smoothly that Lily genuinely feels like she is the chosen one. Show me, she breathes. Bro, are you kidding me? Right there, her final survival instinct flatlines. He does not react with soft romance. He goes full possessive beast mode, carrying her into a bedroom that matches his broken psyche. His massive hands unzip her dress with terrifying speed, muttering about how long he has plotted this exact moment of domination. Remember this simple truth. When a walking red flag trauma dumps his darkest secrets on you, never mistake his toxic confession for an invitation to heal him. Lily has trembling hands as she works his shirt buttons, exposing the scarred physique of the Mafia boss, who now owns her soul. Her dress hits the floor, and Lorenzo stares at her with absolute 0-degree coldness. You and I have totally this toxic dynamic before. He casually lays out his insane demand, wanting to wipe her entire past until only his name lives in her brain. The guy is asking his hostage to hand over the padlock to her own cage. She shoves his shirt off, whispering that she was always his. He replies with icy calm, promising to show her what real surrender looks like. Here is a grim reality to carry with you. The biggest tragedy of the heart is erasing your own identity just to feel safe in the arms of the exact person ruining you. The shadows totally swallow them up as Lorenzo aggressively tears down her last remaining boundaries. He maps out her skin like a conqueror, claiming new turf, perfectly calculating how to extract absolute submission. Hours later, Lily is caught in that wild headspace where she feels like she is finally home, but also free falling off a skyscraper. That is the brutal reality of a trauma bond, guys. He touches her gently now, treating her like fragile glass. Tangled in the sheets, that massive emerald ring catches the light, basically a high-key glittering handcuff. He asks if she has any regret, and she instantly gives him total absolution. Always remember this. True love builds a solid foundation, and it will never ask you to find your comfort in the middle of a deadly fall. Staring into the dark, Lily whispers her only real regret is wasting time trying to be independent. I cannot even believe it. This is the devastating final stage of his brainwashing. Lorenzo cups her cheek, fully cementing his exclusive ownership over her life. In a desperately sad micro-move to save one tiny piece of her old self, she asks to share his last name, framing it as an equal partnership. Lorenzo knows this pathetic little rebellion does absolutely zero damage to his iron grip. He just gives her this warm, terrifying smile and says yes. She hugs him, clinging to the broken delusion of a fair romance. Let us take away this vital lesson today. A gilded cage never magically turns into a safe sanctuary, even if the warden lets you pick the color of the bars. Morning hits the penthouse, and it is brutally bright. Sunlight literally slices through those massive glass walls. Lily wakes up to the suffocating heat of Lorenzo pinning her to the mattress. For one split second, she is super disoriented, but then a sick rush of realization washes over her. She turns and studies his chest, moving up and down. When he is asleep, his sociopathic mafia armor melts off, making him look like a vulnerable, innocent dude. But bro, we know that is a massive lie, and she picked the apex predator, and he locked in his forever victim. The truth here is simple, but super tough to swallow. We constantly mix up shared trauma with genuine affection, but taking a nap inside a tiger cage is never going to give you a safe place to live. His dark hair is a total mess against the white pillows, and she is staring at the faint bruises on his skin, literal receipts of their unhinged night. Without even opening his eyes, he casually tells her to stop staring. She tries to play it off, joking that he is faking sleep just to spy on her. But guys, this insane hyper-vigilance is hardwired into his criminal blood. He just yanks her flush against his chest, completely ignoring the time. Then she sees the clock. It is past 9. Instant panic mode activated. The reality of facing Marco and the crime syndicate hits her like a truck. Take this important lesson to heart. Sometimes, the absolute hardest part of choosing a toxic path is walking outside and letting the world see who you are choosing to hold hands with. You gotta listen to how he talks to her now. He wants his entire Underworld empire to witness this total conquest. That polite corporate boss mask from their early office days is dead and buried. His hand grabs her neck, thumb tracing her jaw like he is literally scanning a barcode. He whispers that her days of answering phones are totally over. A mafia king needs a proper queen, so he just casually hands her the title of executive director. She tries to push back, stammering about business ethics and unearned power. But Lorenzo just smirks, radiating the terrifying ego of a dude who controls the weather. The truth of this moment is painfully simple. You can never successfully negotiate your morals with someone who holds the master keys to your entire reality. This guy is a master manipulator. He tricks her into thinking this insane promotion is just overdue justice, spinning it until his control looks like a shiny gift. Lily is still holding on to the last threads of her morals, trying to fight back. She straight up refuses to wear his fake executive power as a trophy for sleeping with him. But this little pushback just makes his crazy eyes light up with approval. He actually praises her stubbornness, weaponizing her own good heart to drag her deeper into the mud. "You are not like the other women," he whispers. "Bro, that is the ultimate drug for a broken girl. We all want to feel special, right? But seeking your validation from an actual monster is the fastest way to forget who you are when you look in the mirror." He shifts his heavy frame over hers, completely blocking out the morning sun. He starts feeding her the exact validating words she has been starving for, swearing his eternal loyalty. It is a beautifully cold tactic meant to snap an invisible collar around her neck. She actually dares him to prove it, totally blind to the fact that his actions have already built the steel walls of her cell. He lets out this deep, villainous laugh and calls her greedy. When they finally strut into Syndicate headquarters at 11, the vibe completely shifts. Marco takes one look at that massive diamond and Lorenzo holding her waist, and he knows it is over. Love can totally be a beautiful shelter, but you must always beware the cozy shelter that comes with a heavy steel padlock on the outside. Let us look at this piece by piece, you and I. Check out how that absurd engagement ring catches the harsh office light. For a mob boss like Lorenzo, a giant diamond is not about soft, squishy feelings. It is a massive keep-out sign staked into newly conquered territory. He violently shatters her professional boundaries, dragging her clean reputation straight into his bloody Mafia drama. The sudden chaos from the rival syndicate is really just a fresh new stage for his psychotic tendencies to pop off. He commands the entire room, and she is just standing there like a shiny prop in his villain movie. This teaches us a brutal truth about life. Far too often, what we hype up as passionate romance is really just the terrifying architecture of our own emotional cage. The air in the room instantly drops below, freezing the second his turf is threatened. The sweet boyfriend routine totally evaporates, replaced by a terrifying wall of pure violent muscle. The rival family is actively poking the bear, testing his empire to see if his new girl has made him soft. Every single muscle in his face twitches with ugly, paranoid rage. Marco just watches from the shadows, knowing the enemies want to see if this romance has blinded the boss. Lorenzo, hiding behind a calm, icy voice, is really just a defense mechanism to hide his massive fear of losing absolute control over his toys. It happens to all of us, guys. We build these massive walls to look untouchable, completely ignoring the fact that our absolute biggest weaknesses are locked inside with us. Let's kick things off right now because Lorenzo isn't wasting a single second. He demands a sit down on neutral turf before the sun even drops. You and I need to look closely at how he completely plays Lily here. She's begging to stay out of this lethal waterfront turf war, but he totally steamrolls her panic, crowning her his so-called true partner. Guys, this is the absolute peak of toxic manipulation. By dragging her onto the throne of his underworld empire, he makes her feel incredibly seen and untouchable. But the twisted reality, he's literally using her as a human meat shield against the crossfire. Here is the real takeaway for us. True respect means keeping someone out of the blazing fire, not throwing them into the flames just to see them burn. The next 8 hours turn into an absolute masterclass in mind games. Lorenzo completely floods her brain with shady legal papers and dirty money spreadsheets. He flips the script, painting the rival family as the ultimate villains and acting like he's some tragic victim. Sitting there, Lily is absolutely shaking. It finally clicks in her head that the enemy is coming for her just to tear him down. And, get this, Lorenzo actually feeds on that pure panic. He pulls her close, whispering that it's them against the world. He's hacking her brain, weaponizing her fear into hardcore loyalty. It's a wild reality check. When we get terrified enough, we'll totally throw away our morals just to hide behind the exact person who put us in danger in the first place. Just watch how Lorenzo sets this whole trap up. He's practically showering Lily with hype, calling her a genius, and making her feel like the main character. He takes her boring old coffee run days and flips them into this epic origin story for a future Mafia boss. While their heavy car tears through the wet streets for the 8 p.m. showdown, the stress is off the charts. He purposely hypes up her dread about the absolute psychos waiting for them, Marco with his cold-blooded schemes, and Vincent with his insane temper. He does this just to make himself look like her only safe zone. It's a brutal life lesson. If you trap someone in total darkness and crank up the panic, they'll trade their freedom for anyone playing the hero, even if that hero is the real villain. Lily finally shatters under the pressure. Her voice is trembling when she admits she is terrified of the monsters inside. But Lorenzo doesn't give her a sweet, comforting hug. No, the dude goes full Terminator, his jaw locked, and he swears to decimate anyone who breathes on his property. Calling her property? That is a massive red flag. He walks her right into the dead silent restaurant where the enemy crew is waiting with these goons in fancy suits. Lorenzo places his hand right on her lower back. She leans right in, thinking it's pure romance. Bro, it is a literal leash. He's just marking his territory for the wolves. Here is the bottom line. Just because someone holds you tight when it is freezing, it doesn't mean they actually care about keeping you warm. We are finally at the big boss table, and you and I need to watch this moment so closely. Marco Castiano straight up fires the first shot. He's dripping with disrespect, mocking Lily and her new status as the future wife. She freezes up, then snaps back, demanding they use her real last name. It's a tragic final attempt to hold on to her old life. Then Vincent lets out this disgusting, villainous laugh. But Lorenzo doesn't miss a beat. He yanks Lily closer, turning their toxic romance into a literal weapon. He flaunts their connection just to humiliate the fake marriages of his enemies, destroying Teresa in the process. Always watch out for this, guys. Never trust someone who uses your real, vulnerable feelings as a cheap trick to win a dirty fight against the people they hate. The vibe in the room flips the second the shady waterfront business starts. Lorenzo drops his paperwork on the table with the stone-cold confidence of a final boss. He breaks down his legal right to turf, showing he left sectors 4 through 7 untouched for 18 months, playing perfectly by their rules. Vincent is absolutely losing his mind, slamming his fist down and screaming about the permits in Sector 12. Right here, stuck between these monsters, Lily makes the ultimate terrible mistake. She actually jumps into the screaming match, defending the exact guy who destroyed her life. It's such a dark reality check. If you pour enough of your soul into a burning building, eventually, you'll gladly dive straight into the fire just to protect the ashes. Picture the scene with me right now. The entire boardroom goes dead, silent, the second Lily drops that killer legal clause. Across the table, Vincent completely loses his smug attitude. He desperately tries to save face, spitting out the word secretary like it's garbage. But Lorenzo is running this show now. He leans in, and his voice drops to a terrifying rumble. He straight up rebrands her in front of all these killers: director, partner, future wife. Vincent visibly shrinks back from the pure intimidation. Lorenzo has perfectly weaponized her massive brain for his own empire. You've got to remember this rule. When you fix a giant problem for a truly dangerous person, they'll never set you free. You just proved you're way too valuable to ever let walk away. The tension in this room is literally suffocating. Teresa is trying harder to cool everyone down, blaming it on stressful paperwork. But Marco is staring daggers. This whole meeting was a complete setup. They were testing Lorenzo, trying to see if catching feelings made the boss go soft. But look at his reaction. The guy doesn't blink. He pulls off this insane flex, telling those wolves that Lily is his absolute rock. He uses this fake weakness as a bulletproof vest. Sitting there, Lily completely falls for it. She blushes, totally surrendering to the illusion of his devotion. It's honestly tragic to watch. But we have to understand this reality. Our brains will happily swallow a beautiful lie just so we don't have to face the terrifying truth that we're locked in a cage. The massive doors finally shut, and this insane psychological warfare ends. Soon after, the heavy locks of their armored car click shut, trapping them in the dark. Lorenzo immediately pulls her in for an aggressive kiss, holding her like his ultimate prize. He's hyping up how savage she was back in that meeting. But guys, her hands are shaking uncontrollably. She breaks down, admitting how terrified she was the entire time. And what does he do? He just wipes a tear away, completely ignoring her trauma, because he only cares about the perfect mask she wore for his rivals. Here's a massive red flag. To a high-level manipulator, your internal suffering means absolutely nothing, just as long as your outward obedience makes them look like a total winner. I mean, look closely at how this guy touches her face in the dark. It isn't romantic at all. It's a straight-up claim of ownership. He's locking her into his criminal underworld for good. As the weeks roll by, Lily sees the brutal violence of his mob life firsthand. But watch how her brain totally twists the narrative to cope. She convinces herself that she's the only one who truly understands his broken soul. She actually believes that, because he's gentle with her, it somehow washes the blood off his hands. It's the classic trap, thinking your pure affection will magically fix a villain. We all have to learn this the hard way. Thinking you have the special power to change a monster is the exact delusion that leaves you completely defenseless when they finally decide to destroy you. Now the scene cuts to this insanely chilling wedding. We're talking 150 Mafia bosses sitting there, calculating every move. Lily is literally walking down the aisle toward her own doom, carrying the last piece of her normal life into this beautiful nightmare. Up at the altar, she stares into his eyes, totally mistaking his boss-level possessiveness for actual, true love. The massive church ceilings echo as they say their vows. When Lorenzo whispers that he'll cherish her forever, you can practically hear the steel vault of her mind locking her inside for good. You and I need to really let this lesson sink in today. The hardest prisons to escape are almost never made out of iron bars. They are perfectly built out of the most gorgeous, unbelievable fairy tale promises. The gold rings slip onto her shaking fingers, and this creepy, unnatural calm washes over Lily. She's completely given up the fight, trading a safe life for the crazy adrenaline rush of marrying a mob boss. The priest says the words, blessing the most toxic relationship ever. Lorenzo yanks her in, and their kiss is this wild mix of fake romance and terrifying ownership. It's the absolute final nail in the coffin. They press foreheads together, whispering about belonging to each other like a dark blood pact. That sweet, innocent girl is officially gone, swallowed by the monster she fell for. The final takeaway is brutal, guys. The most dangerous traps in the world are the ones we happily lock ourselves inside because we're completely addicted to the thrill. Look at this absolute madness. Guys, they walk down the aisle as husband and wife, soaking up that fake glow from the church windows. Lily is straight up delusional here. She knows this guy is a ruthless mafia boss, but she ignores the massive red flags screaming in her face just to pretend they are equals. She paints her downfall from an independent woman into a crime syndicate queen as some epic dark romance. She cannot even see the heavy, invisible chains dragging behind her wedding dress. The ultimate flex for a tyrant is not just locking up the bird, it is making the bird think it owns the sky. Let that sink in for a second. You will never break free from a toxic grip if you keep finding cute ways to romanticize the exact poison stopping your heart.